The lab buzzed with excitement as the final tests on the new energy generator began. Evelyn Cross stood at the control panel, her eyes glued to the screens that displayed the results of weeks of meticulous work ahead of her. A sense of accomplishment filled the air. The project was about to change everything. The generator was supposed to be the key to solving humanity's energy crisis. It could power entire cities without ever running out of fuel. The room around her was filled with the hum of machinery and the quiet chatter of her team as they double-checked readings and prepared for the grand demonstration. Alex, the lead hacker, was pacing back and forth, his hands stuffed in his pockets. His eyes narrowed as he observed the code running on his computer screens. "We're almost there," he muttered to himself. "Just a few more tweaks, and this thing will be perfect." But there was something nagging at him, a feeling he couldn't shake, a quiet unease that settled deep in his stomach. As the team prepared to launch the generator, a sudden blaring alarm interrupted the calm buzz of the lab. Cross whipped around, her eyes darting to the console where the alarm had originated. "What's going on?" she demanded as she moved quickly to the panel. The room fell silent, the screen now displaying a cascade of errors, flashing red warnings everywhere. The prototype was failing, and no one could understand why. "This doesn't make sense," Alex said, his voice shaking. "Everything was fine a moment ago." Cross frowned. She leaned closer to the console running diagnostics. She knew the design inside and out there should have been no issue, but the reading showed something completely unexpected, a critical failure at the core of the generator, one that was impossible to cause without deliberate interference. "Check the system logs," she said urgently. "Something's wrong. We've been sabotaged." The words hung in the air, and a chill ran through the room. Her team exchanged nervous glances. They had worked so hard to get to this point, but now it seemed that someone was trying to stop them. They ran through the logs, each of them scanning for any anomalies, any signs of external interference. After what felt like hours, Alex finally found it, a strange string of code hidden deep in the system, an unauthorized access point. Someone had broken in and altered the core functions of the generator. "This was no accident," Alex said, his voice low. "This was sabotage." Cross stared at the screen, her mind racing. The implications were clear. Someone out there didn't want humanity to succeed, not just anyone, but a force far more powerful and far more calculating than anything they had faced before. "Who would do this?" she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. A few moments of silence passed before Captain Core spoke up, the former military strategist who had been working with the team since the project's inception. "I've been studying our competition, and it's clear to me this wasn't just some disgruntled person. This was organized," he said. Cross looked at him, her heart racing. "Organized by who?" "Someone with a lot to lose if we succeed," Core replied. "Someone who has been watching us from the shadows." The tension in the room thickened as the reality began to sink in. Someone was trying to stop them, and whoever it was wasn't going to stop until they did. Cross clenched her fists. "We won't let them win," she said with a fire in her eyes. The war for humanity's future had just begun. Cross couldn't shake the feeling that something far bigger was at play here. The sabotage had been too well executed, too precise. It wasn't the work of a lone person or even a small group of discontented individuals. This was orchestrated by someone with deep resources and a clear purpose. They needed to find out who was behind this and why. Alex and the rest of the team worked tirelessly to uncover the origins of the strange code they had found hidden within their system. It was unlike anything they had ever seen before. It wasn't just a virus or a malicious program. It was a message, a signal that pointed to something much deeper. "This is bad," Alex said one night as he scrolled through the encrypted files. "Whoever did this is watching our every move. They've been planting breadcrumbs all along." Cross frowned as she looked over his shoulder at the screen. She could see the complexity of the code. It wasn't just sabotage, it was a warning. "What do you mean breadcrumbs?" she asked. "Whoever did this has been hiding clues in our systems for months," Alex replied. "It's like they've been testing us to see how far we would go. They know we're getting closer to something big, and they don't want us to succeed." Captain Core entered the room, his face tense as he took in the conversation. "We're not just up against an enemy we can see," He said, "This is something else. This is an invisible war." Cross nodded, her mind racing. She had suspected that they were being watched, but now she knew for sure someone was manipulating events from the shadows. "So what do we do now?" she asked. "We go on the offensive," Core said, his eyes burning with determination. "We have to turn the tables and show them that we won't back down." The team quickly agreed they weren't going to let this force stop them. They had worked too hard and too long to let their progress be taken away. Over the next few days, they began to rebuild their work even more secretly than before. They moved operations to a hidden facility and set up new layers of security to keep out any unwanted eyes. But the closer they got to their goal, the more intense the feeling of being watched grew. Cross couldn't help but wonder if they were truly alone, or if the shadow of the enemy was always just behind them, waiting for the right moment to strike. One night, as the team was gathered around a table discussing their next steps, Alex received a strange message on his computer. The source was untraceable, but the contents were clear. It was a warning written in bold letters: "Stop now, or FEDCs, the consequences." For Cross looked at the screen, her heart pounding. This was no longer just about sabotage. It was a threat, a direct challenge from someone who wanted them to quit. "They're not going to stop until we give up," Alex said grimly. "We have to finish what we started." The air was thick with tension, but Cross felt a fire ignite within her. It wasn't just her project anymore. It was humanity's future that was on the line, and she wasn't about to let it slip away. "We're not backing down," she said, her voice steady. "We're going to finish this, and we're going to show them that innovation will always prevail." The team exchanged determined looks. They had faced obstacles before, but this time it was different now. They were in a fight for something bigger than any of them could have imagined. The real battle had only just begun. The team worked relentlessly day and night to make the breakthrough they desperately needed. Cross knew that time was running out. The sabotage had shaken them, but it also lit a fire within her. They couldn't let this stop them. They had to push forward and create something that the enemy could not touch, something so secure that no one could sabotage it again. Alex was leading the efforts in designing a new system, one that would be completely isolated from any external threats. He spent countless hours working on coding new security features. The rest of the team focused on rebuilding the generator from the ground up. This time, they would implement cutting-edge technology that would make their invention bulletproof. "This is going to be our last chance," Cross said as he observed the progress being made, the weight of responsibility pressing on her shoulders. "If this doesn't work, we might not get another shot." The pressure was immense, but her team was determined. Every member brought their unique talents and skills to the table. They were united by the same goal: to finish the project and prove that humanity could innovate no matter the odds. Weeks passed as they made gradual progress. They discovered new techniques and methods that pushed the boundaries of science and technology. They were on the verge of something revolutionary, but they knew they had to be cautious. One misstep, and everything could fall apart again. One afternoon, as the team gathered to test the latest modifications, Alex sat at his console, running a final diagnostic on the system, when the unthinkable happened. The alarms blared again, the monitors flashed red, and the familiar signs of sabotage reappeared. "Not again," Alex muttered under his breath, as he quickly tried to trace the source of the attack. "It's happening all over again." Cross's heart sank as she looked at the screen. The new security systems had been bypassed. Someone had found a way to infiltrate their defenses despite all their precautions. It was as though they were always one step behind. "How is this possible?" she asked the room, her voice strained. "We designed everything to be foolproof." "They've learned from our mistakes," Captain Core said, his expression hard. "They know what we're trying to do, and they're adapting faster than we are." The sabotage was different this time, more sophisticated, more targeted. They had gone after the most critical parts of their systems, the very foundation of the generator itself. "We need to act fast," Cross said, her mind racing. "We can't afford to lose everything again." With urgency, they began to investigate the source of the attack. Alex's fingers flew over the keyboard as he dug deeper into the system logs. This time, they found something more than just random code. There was a pattern. It wasn't just an attack. It was a message, a deliberate attempt to lead them into a trap. "They want us to fail," Alex said grimly. "They're not just trying to stop us, they want to make sure we give up completely." Turcross clenched her fists, her resolve hardening. This was no longer just about the project, it was about survival. The Zekor had made their move, they had shown their hand, and now it was up to her team to outthink them. "We can't let them win," she said, her voice unwavering. "We're going to finish this, no matter what it takes." The team nodded in agreement. They were done running, they were done being pushed around. They would fight back. They would prove that no matter how many times they were knocked down, they would always rise up stronger. And so the battle for humanity's future continued. As the days passed, the weight of betrayal settled heavily on the team. Turcross felt it most acutely. The trust she had placed in everyone around her had been shattered. It wasn't just the failure of the project that stung, it was the realization that one of her own had been feeding the enemy all along. It happened late one night when the team was working late. Alex was at the console reviewing the logs, once more trying to trace the origin of the latest sabotage, when something unusual caught his eye. "Wait a minute," he said under his breath. "This can't be right." Turcross rushed over to his side. "What is it?" Alex looked at her with a mixture of confusion and disbelief. "It's him," he said, pointing to the log entry. "It's Tony. He's been accessing the system without authorization for months." Tony, the team's chief engineer, had been a trusted member of the project. Since the beginning, no one suspected him of any wrongdoing, but the evidence was clear. His access logs were everywhere, and each time a major system failure occurred, his login had been active. Turcross's heart sank. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. The man she had trusted, the man who had worked beside her all this time, had been betraying them from the inside. "Are you sure?" she asked, voice barely a whisper. Alex nodded, his face pale. "There's no mistaking it. He's been sabotaging the work. He's been working for them all along." The revelation hit like a wave crashing against the shore. The team was shaken to its core. They felt exposed, vulnerable. Their trust had been shattered, and now they had to confront the truth. Turcross felt a storm of emotions rage inside her: anger, betrayal, confusion. But there was one thing she knew for certain: they couldn't let this setback stop them. They couldn't let the Zekor win. "Where is he now, Captain Kor?" asked his voice, low and dangerous. Alex checked the logs again. "He's gone," he said. "He hasn't been in the facility for hours." Turcross's mind raced. They had to find Tony before he could do any more damage. But they also needed answers. They needed to understand who he was working for and why he had turned on them. "We need to track him down," she said, her voice firm. "And when we do, we'll make sure he pays for what he's done." The team sprang into action, splitting up to search for any signs of Tony's whereabouts. But deep down, they all knew this was bigger than just one person. They were up against something much larger, something that had been pulling the strings from the shadows for far too long. Turcross couldn't help but wonder if this betrayal was part of a bigger plan, if the Zekor had been using Tony all along to bring them down from the inside. Hours passed as the team scoured the area, but there was no sign of Tony, no trace of where he had gone. In the end, it became clear that they weren't just dealing with a traitor, they were dealing with an enemy that was far more cunning and dangerous than they had ever imagined. "This isn't over," Turcross said as she stared out into the distance. "Not by a long shot." The stakes had just gotten even higher. The weight of the betrayal still lingered in the air, like a dark cloud that refused to lift. Turcross couldn't stop thinking about Tony. What had driven him to turn against them? Was he always working for the enemy, or had they somehow twisted his mind? Was he just another victim of the Zekor's manipulation? Questions without answers swirled in her mind, but she knew she couldn't afford to dwell on them for long. They had more pressing matters to deal with. The sabotage had escalated beyond what they could have imagined, and now they had to stop it once and for all. The team gathered in the war room later that evening, their faces tired but determined. "We need to make a move," Captain Kor said, his voice firm, as he looked around at the others. "We can't let this drag on any longer. If we want to finish this project, we need to hit the Zekor hard and fast." Turcross nodded. She had been thinking the same thing. They had the technology, they had the skill. Now they just needed to take the fight to their enemies. But there was one problem: they had no idea who or where their enemies were. "But how do we find them?" Alex asked, looking around the room. "We've been attacked from all sides, and we still don't know who's behind it all." "We do have one lead," Cross said, looking at the screen in front of her. "We traced a signal to an abandoned facility just outside the city the last time Tony accessed the system. The signal came from there." Captain Core raised an eyebrow. "An old facility, why would they be hiding there?" "It's remote," Cross explained. "No one would think to look there, but it would be the perfect place for them to hide." "Then we need to go there," Core said, his voice unwavering. "And we need to do it now before they make another move." The team didn't waste any time. They suited up and began preparing for the mission. The plan was simple: infiltrate the facility, find out who was running the operation, and shut it down before they could do any more damage. As they made their way to the location, the air was thick with anticipation. The silence of the night amplified every sound. Their footsteps echoed in the empty streets, but no one spoke a word. Their minds were focused on the task ahead. The facility loomed ahead of them, a dark and crumbling structure that looked like it had been abandoned for years. But Cross knew better. This wasn't just an old building. This was where the Zekor had been hiding in plain sight. They moved carefully through the dark hallways, their weapons ready for anything. When they reached the main control room, the door creaked open, revealing rows of monitors and computer equipment flickering in the dim light. It was exactly what they had feared. "This is it," Alex said, his voice tight, as he scanned the room. "This is where they've been pulling the strings." But before they could do anything, the door slammed shut behind them, locking them inside with a deafening clang. Cross's heart raced as she turned around, her mind racing with possibilities. "We've walked right into their trap," she said, her voice steady despite the growing tension. And just like that, the real fight began. The door slammed shut behind them with a deafening clang, trapping them inside the control room. Cross's heart pounded in her chest as she quickly assessed the situation. The team had been caught in a trap, but they weren't going to give up so easily. They had come too far to let this stop them. "Stay calm," Captain Core said, his voice low but steady as he checked the surroundings. "We've been through worse before. We just need to think this through." Alex quickly moved to the console in the corner of the room, his fingers flying across the keys as he tried to override the security system. "I don't know how much time we have," Alex said, his voice tight, "but I'm trying to find a way out." Cross surveyed the room, her eyes scanning for any possible exit. There had to be a way out, but the facility felt like a maze. Every door seemed to lead to another dead end. "Keep looking, Alex," she said, her voice firm. "We need to get out of here before they realize we found their base." But deep down she knew they were already too late. The Zekor had been watching them from the shadows for too long, and now they had the upper hand. The silence in the room grew oppressive as Alex continued to work on the console, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Found it," Alex said after what felt like an eternity, his voice filled with relief. "I've unlocked the door, but we have to move fast. They'll know we're here soon." Without wasting another second, the team quickly moved toward the door and burst into the hallway. They moved quickly and quietly down the dark corridors, their footsteps echoing off the walls. They knew they had to find the source of the Zekor's operation and shut it down before it was too late. But as they reached a large central chamber, the lights suddenly flickered to life, revealing a room filled with monitors and equipment, all of it connected to a massive machine at the center of the room. "This is it," Captain Core said, his voice low with awe. "This is where it's all coming from." Cross's eyes locked onto the machine. It was unlike anything she had ever seen before, a massive array of cables and wires connected to a glowing core at the heart of it all. "What is it?" Alex asked, his voice tense, as he stepped closer to the machine. Cross studied the device for a moment, her mind racing. "This is what they've been using to manipulate the generator," she said slowly. "They've been siphoning power from our work, turning it into something else." "Something dangerous," Core said, his eyes narrowing. "This is why they've been sabotaging us. They were trying to steal our technology and use it for their own gain." Cross felt a surge of anger, but also a sense of determination. This wasn't just about protecting their work anymore. This was about stopping the Zekor from using their creation to destroy everything they had fought for. "We can't let them use this," Durcross said, her voice filled with resolve. "We need to shut it down now." But before they could take another step, the room was flooded with light and armed guards flooded in from every entrance. They were surrounded. "You should have stayed away," a voice called from the shadows, and a figure stepped forward. It was Tony, his eyes cold and distant. Durcross's stomach twisted with betrayal, but she held her ground. "Tony," she said, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside her. "Why?" Tony's lips curled into a sneer. "Because this is bigger than you, Durcross. This is bigger than any of us," he said. "This is the future of humanity, and you were never meant to be a part of it." The battle for their lives and the future of humanity was about to begin. Tony stood before them, his face cold and unreadable. Durcross's heart sank as she stared at him. This wasn't the man she had worked alongside for so long. This was someone else, someone who had chosen a path of destruction and betrayal. "Tony," she said again, her voice shaky but strong, "you don't have to do this." Tony's expression remained unchanged. "You don't understand, Durcross. This isn't just about you or your little project," he said. "This is about survival. Humanity was on the brink of collapse, and you were too blinded by your idealism to see it." "We were trying to save everyone," Durcross said, her voice rising in frustration. "This generator could have changed everything. It could have solved the energy crisis. It could have saved us." Tony shook his head. "It was never about saving people," he said bitterly. "It was about power. Whoever controls energy controls the world, and the Zekora understand that better than anyone." Captain Core stepped forward, his eyes hard as he locked onto Tony. "You've become a pawn, Tony," he said. "They've used you to destroy everything we've worked for, and for what, so they can control the world." Tony's lips curled into a sneer. "I'm no pawn," he spat. "I'm doing what needs to be done." Durcross took a deep breath, her mind racing, as she tried to make sense of what Tony had become, but there was no time to dwell on it. She couldn't let him win. They couldn't let the Zekora take control of their invention. "We're stopping you here," Durcross said, her voice unwavering. "This ends now." Tony's eyes flickered with something dark and dangerous. "You think you can stop me?" he said with a mocking laugh. "You think you can stop all of this just by turning off a machine?" "We don't have to stop everything," Durcross said, "but we can stop you. We can shut this operation down." Tony didn't reply. Instead, he signaled to the guards who had surrounded them, their weapons raised and aimed directly at the team. "You're too late," Tony said, his voice cold. "The machine is already activated. Once it goes live, the generator will be siphoned off permanently. You'll never be able to reverse it." "Then we'll have to shut it down manually," Captain Core said, his voice full of grit. "We'll take it out before it does any more damage." Without another word, the team sprang into action. They knew what they had to do. They had to reach the core of the machine and shut it down before it could drain any more energy from the generator. But as they moved toward the machine, Tony and his guards attacked. The battle that ensued was fast and brutal. The guards were well trained and heavily armed, but the team was determined. They fought with everything they had. Durcross ducked behind a console as bullets whizzed past her. She could hear the sounds of the fight echoing in her ears, but she kept her focus on the machine. They needed to reach it. They needed to stop it. Alex was the first to make it to the machine. He began working on the control panel furiously, his hands moving faster than Durcross thought possible. "We need more time," he shouted as the guards closed in. "Hold them off," Durcross yelled to Core as she sprinted toward Alex. They had to succeed. They had no other choice. The battle raged around them as the team fought to reach the machine. Captain Core was in the thick of it, his weapon raised as he moved swiftly, taking down the guards one by one. His movements were calculated, efficient, but even he could feel the strain of being outnumbered. Alex's fingers flew over the control panel, his face set in a mask of concentration. But the seconds felt like hours. Each moment that passed was another moment closer to disaster. "I need more time," Alex shouted as the panel flickered with error messages. "They'd locked me out. I can't override it completely." Durcross's heart pounded as she ducked behind a pillar, trying to avoid the barrage of gunfire coming from Tony's guards. She had to think fast. They couldn't let this slip away. They couldn't let everything they had worked for be destroyed. "Alex, we need that machine offline now," Darkross yelled. "Working on it." Alex grunted as he punched the console with frustration. Just a few more seconds. The guards were closing in on them. Faster now, Captain Core fired off shot after shot, but the weight of their numbers began to wear him down. Tony stood on the sidelines watching his former allies struggle with a cold smirk on his face. He was a man who had chosen his side, and nothing was going to change that. "You can't win," Tony said, his voice taunting. "This is bigger than all of you." Darkross glared at him, her eyes filled with determination. "It's not over yet." She turned to Captain Core, who was still holding his ground. "We need to push forward. We can't let him stop us now." Captain Core nodded, his face grim, and said, "We take this place down together." They fought with everything they had, pushing the guards back inch by inch, but they were outnumbered, and the battle was taking its toll. Alex was still working on the control panel, but the pressure was mounting. Every click of the machine felt like another step closer to failure. Darkross moved toward him, her eyes locked on the countdown clock that was ticking away in the corner of the screen. "We're running out of time." "I know," Alex said through clenched teeth as he worked faster, his fingers moving like lightning over the buttons. "Just give me a few more seconds." Darkross felt the weight of every passing second, but she kept pushing. She couldn't let the Zekor win. Not now, not after everything they had sacrificed. With one final push, Alex slammed his fist onto the control panel, and the machine hummed to a halt. The countdown stopped, and the room fell into a tense silence. "Did it work?" Darkross asked, her voice tight with hope. Alex nodded, his face pale but filled with relief. "It's off. It's finally off." The guards paused for a moment, as if trying to process what had just happened, and in that brief moment of hesitation, Captain Core and the team moved forward with fierce determination, taking down the remaining threats one by one. Tony stood there watching the collapse of his operation, his face twisted with rage and disbelief. "This isn't over," he said, his voice low with venom. "You can't stop us forever." Darkross stepped forward, her voice steady as she spoke the final words. "We already have." The battle was won, but the war was far from over. The Zekor had lost one battle, but Darkross knew they would keep fighting. The fight for humanity's future had only just begun. And with that, they left the facility behind, knowing that their work wasn't finished yet, but they had made a significant step forward. The world was waiting for them.